Anastasia, can we start? Good morning, everybody. Anastasia, do you hear me?
Yes, sorry, I'm just trying
No problem.
up with a lot of issues that people are
Yeah.
having.
Is it okay? Have you? Is okay. If you have some issues, we can wait like
No, I think
2 or 5 minutes.
it's just a lot of questions come in different type of question, not only technical. So for me, I think Lumi has confirmed that we have a quorum, and in any case, we will do another roll call. I think we've reminded everybody who's connected now on Zoom to connect to log in with Lumi system. And if you have any issues, you see the email address which you can use to ask for support. And then, yeah, I think we can start the second day of the Congress. Mohammed, the floor is yours. Yeah,
Thank you, Anastasia.
Okay, bye.
Good morning and good evening, everybody. Dear IBA family, dear friends, thank you for joining for this second day of the Congress after the first day of the Congress, which we had to elect new IBA president, and that I will congratulate him once again for his successful election and wish him all the best for the future, and wish all the national federations a better and greater future. As you know, we will start this second day of the Congress by reviewing the most important changes that we have in our new proposal for constitution. That's why I will, before giving the floor, I would like to thank all our legal advisors and legal commission that worked very, very hard to provide us with a constitution to be adopted by our national federations. Thank you so much. And I give the floor to Maître Garimour and Maître Ramoni to have the explain all the changes that we are proposing. Thank you so much.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Claude Ramoni, and I will lead this session on the Constitution. But perhaps just before, I will just ask Lumi if Lumi could just let us know the number of federations which are connected to the platform to ensure that we've got a quorum.
Absolutely, and hello to everyone. This is Pete Fowler again from Lumi. I can confirm right now that we have 101 NFs present. We're just going to share that slide for you right now. So that is 101. Of course, that means at the moment we have around 56 that have not joined. So it's obviously that's a lot of data to put on a slide, but I can say right now we have 101. So once again, all voting members that have not logged into Lumi, please ensure you do so. But currently we have reached the quorum and we have 101 so far.
Thank you very much, Pete. It's true, the quorum is, we have 158 eligible federation, means that the quorum is at 80. So we have largely a quorum. And if further delegates join later, that's always good. And in order to conduct this session on the Constitution, there will be, in fact, I would say 5 parts. First, I will pass the floor to Garimour to explain roughly, shortly, the purpose of the amendment and how it was done. Then I believe we may have some questions, but you know that federations had the opportunity to submit amendments, proposed amendments, and this was done by 2 federations. So therefore, if anyone has some questions, it will not be possible to move a motion at this late stage, but if anyone has something to say on the new constitution, then there will be a short opportunity. Then we will explain how the voting process for the constitution will go, and then we will move forward with the proposed amendments and finishing the session by adoption of the full constitution. So now I'll pass the floor to Gary for the presentation of the amendments.
Thank you, Claude. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to firstly our chairperson, Dr. Mustasan, to the distinguished members of the Executive Committee, of the Election Committee, of the Ethics and Disciplinary Commissions, and of course to all Congress delegates. For those that don't know me, my name is Gary Moore and I have the honour to be IBA's legal counsel. What I propose to do is to take you through some of the more important provisions in the new draft constitution. But before I do that, I want to give you something of the background leading up to the presentation we now make. And so can I have slide 2? Thank you. As most of you will be aware, leading up last year to IBA's suspension from the Olympic movement, the IOC commissioned a report, the Lalovich report, which made a number of significant criticisms of IBA. These criticisms can be grouped under 3 main heads: culture, finances, and governance, with IBA's statutes being at the centre of the IOC's governance concerns. However, even prior to its suspension, IBA had determined to rewrite its statutes. If you examine those statutes carefully, you will see that they are poorly written, obscure in parts, and with many contradictions. The statutes are also inefficient and insufficiently democratic. In reality, they're not fit for purpose. Next slide, please. IBA commenced its governance reform work by writing to all of its national federations in the second half of 2019, seeking proposals for provisions to be included in the new IBA constitution. Some 40 or so national federations responded with concrete suggestions. Some of the suggestions came from groups of national federations and some from individual federations. Some of the suggestions were brief, others were more lengthy. They often contradicted one another. Nonetheless, all these suggestions were sifted, compared, and analysed. IBA's Executive Committee then considered them all carefully. In November of 2019, the Executive Committee was fortunate in being able to commission Dr. Francois Corrard, an eminent Swiss attorney, to provide preliminary assistance in drafting a new constitution for IBA. Dr. Corrard is a former Director General of the IOC, and he currently serves as its legal counsel. However, before he could take his work with respect to a new constitution very far, Dr. Corrard was required by the IOC to cease helping IBA, with the IOC asserting that he had a conflict of interest. Next slide, please. The Executive Committee next established a Governance Reform Commission to prepare a draft of a new IBA constitution. The Reform Commission consisted of the 5 IBA vice presidents: Dr. Mustasan from Africa, Mr. Falcinelli from Europe, Mr. Bisbal from the Americas, Mr. Alatoiba from Asia, Mr. Tanner from Oceania, together with 3 other Executive Committee members, Mr. Wudi from China, Mr. Kremlev from Russia, and Mr. Silvas from the United States, and also 3 lawyers: me in my capacity as IBA's legal counsel, Dr. Ramoni, in his capacity as IBA's Swiss attorney, and Mr. Alessandro Oliverio, the European Boxing Confederation's legal counsel. The Executive Committee further appointed Mr. Wu Di as chairperson of the Reform Commission. And if I might say so, Mr. Wu Di did an excellent job in coordinating and facilitating the work of the Commission. The Reform Commission met on a number of occasions, including 2 meetings in China, which were very generously hosted by Mr. Wu Di. And there were also very many phone calls exchanged. The drafting work on the Constitution was done by the lawyers, and it was a difficult task. We, the lawyers, made many suggestions. There was extensive and intensive debate and exchanges of ideas. But ultimately, we lawyers took our lead from the Reform Commission as a whole. Next slide, please. The drafting of the Constitution proceeded with the following principal objects in mind: democratic governance, transparency, efficiency, and enhanced ethical oversight. In order to achieve these objectives, the following leading principles were sought to be implemented. Firstly, providing more power and authority to confederations and to national federations. Secondly, clearly setting out the tasks of the various IBA organs. Thirdly, reducing the powers of the President. Fourthly, simplifying IBA's structures, such as by reducing numbers on its executive body and by reducing the number of mandatory commissions. And finally, by improving governance control mechanisms. Drafting work on the Constitution proceeded until only a comparatively short time ago. The final draft was unanimously approved by the Reform Commission and then again approved by a majority of the members of the Executive Committee. Now, the draft Constitution is obviously a large and somewhat complex document, and time does not permit me to address each article in it. So what follows is an explanation of some of the more important features in the document. Next slide, please. The Congress remains IBA's principal organ of government. Under the new Constitution, it will meet at least every 2 years, with elections being held at Congresses every 4 years. Although a number of the powers of Congress will remain unchanged, it will also be invested with some new powers. And the powers of Congress under the draft Constitution include the power to admit and exclude national federations, the power to elect and remove officials, the power to confer distinguished service awards on deserving persons, the power to approve, query, or reject financial reports, the power to determine annual fees payable by national federations, the power to approve, amend, or replace the Constitution, the power to dissolve IBA, the power to rule on any suspension of a national federation by the IBA board, the power to approve or not approve the members of the Ethics Committee and of the disciplinary committees, the power to dismiss board members, the power to approve or not approve reports submitted to it by the board, and the power to define or redefine the geographic areas covered by conventions. Next slide, please. The current Executive Committee, with up to 32 members under the Constitution, will be replaced by a board of 22 directors. None of these directors will be appointed. All will be elected. And the board will consist of the President of IBA, who is to be elected at each election Congress meeting by the delegates as a whole attending that meeting. Secondly, the presidents from time to time of the 5 confederations, in each case elected by the national federations within the confederation concerned in accordance with the confederation's constitution. Next, 2 representatives from each confederation, 1 male and 1 female, elected at the Congress, but only by the delegates within each confederation concerned. Then 1 person from each of the African, the American, the Asian, and the European confederations, each elected by the delegates as a whole attending the Congress meeting. And finally, 2 athletes, 1 male and 1 female, elected by the athletes themselves. Next slide, please. The executive power of IBA will be vested in the board. Under the terms of the draft constitution, the board is obliged to meet at least 3 times a year. Meetings may take place on a face-to-face basis or remotely using telecommunications. Save that it is still empowered to suspend national federations for reasons other than the non-payment of fees and other monies, the board will no longer have any disciplinary powers. Any suspension of a national federation is subject to review by the Congress. Now, in the case of urgent matters, an IBA council consisting of 5 members, the president, the vice president, and 3 other directors elected by the board, may make necessary decisions. But all such decisions are subject to review by the board. Next slide, please. The principal functions of the president of IBA under the new constitution are to convene meetings of the board, to chair those meetings, and in the main, to chair Congress meetings. Further, the president is empowered to represent IBA and to act as its primary spokesperson. Importantly, the president will no longer have executive powers such as the power to appoint officials. Rather than IBA's existing vice presidents, there will only be 1 vice president under the new constitution. That vice president will be elected by the board's directors from among their own number. The vice president's main role is to step into the shoes of the president in circumstances where the president is unable to exercise his or her functions. The administrative work of IBA will be conducted by the staff at the IBA head office, and they will act under the direction of a Secretary General appointed by the board in accordance with the selection process which will be developed. Next slide, please. The draft constitution leaves many of IBA's governance rules to be left to regulations rather than being included in the constitution itself. This is in accordance with contemporary good governance principles and is designed to enhance IBA's operational flexibility and to avoid constant constitutional changes. Importantly, most of the existing IBA standing commissions, youth, coaches, finance, marketing, medical, R&Js, women's, and technical and rules will be left to be dealt with in the new regulations. Only the ethics, disciplinary, athletes, and audit committees will be entrenched in the Constitution. The Constitution also makes provision for a finance officer and a legal counsel. The finance officer will provide advice to IBA with respect to the spectrum of IBA's financial affairs. The legal counsel will provide IBA with both constitutional and legal advice. Both the finance officer and the legal counsel are appointed and may be dismissed by the board. Can I have the next slide, please? The draft constitution creates an enhanced role for the new ethics committee. Members of the ethics committee will be nominated by the IBA board, but their nominations are subject to approval or rejection by the Congress. They can be removed from the ethics committee, but only by a 2/3 vote of the board. Members will ordinarily serve for 4 years. If during his or her term, a member's position becomes vacant, his or her position will be filled by a person chosen by the remaining members of the committee and not by the board. The duties of the Ethics Committee are set out in the Constitution, and they include developing and reviewing a framework of ethical principles for IBA, providing advice and assistance to IBA to ensure the proper implementation of IBA's ethical principles, investigating and reporting on possible ethical breaches, assisting IBA in identifying and resolving conflicts of interest, and vetting the qualifications for office of candidates for election to the board, And finally, chairing meetings of Congress during elections. Next slide, please. The new Constitution provides for enhanced supervision and control of IBA's finances. As mentioned earlier, the appointment of a finance advisor by the board is designed to secure further expert financial advice for IBA. The Constitution also provides for the appointment of an internal audit committee. This committee is to liaise with IBA's chief financial officer and the external auditor in order to review accounting reports and IBA's financial statements. The audit committee will be required to report to the board not less than once every 6 months. IBA's accounts will continue to be audited by its external auditor. This auditor is to be appointed by the board and, in accordance with Swiss law, must be fully independent and professionally qualified. The auditor is to present an audit report to the board each year and to the Congress every 2 years. The board will have the responsibility of approving an annual budget for IBA. It will also be responsible for the approval of any necessary expenditures not foreseen in the budget. Any document relating to an expenditure exceeding a limit on amounts fixed by the board must be signed by any two of the following: the President, the Vice President, and the Secretary General. Next slide, please. One of the primary responsibilities of the board under the new Constitution will be to make regulations governing the conduct of international boxing competitions. In this respect, the Constitution embodies two important changes, and may at this stage acknowledge the important contribution made by Mr. Falcinelli to ensuring that these changes were in fact made to the Constitution. In the first place, no director will be entitled to be a member of any committee whose principal purpose is to regulate technical or competition issues such as T&C rules, refereeing and judging, coaching, and the appointment of competition officials. And in the second place, no director will henceforth be entitled to be a competition official. So thank you, Mr. Falcinelli. Next slide, please. Now, as mentioned earlier, the new Constitution is designed to be simply the core of the rules governing IBA. It will necessarily be supplemented and complemented with regulations. Building on the existing rules of IBA, the board proposes to adopt a raft of regulations governing ethical matters, which will be developed in association with the new Ethics Committee, disciplinary matters, which will be developed in association with the new Disciplinary Committee, anti-doping issues, and technical and competition issues. The board will likely adopt a range of further governance regulations dealing with matters such as election campaigning, procedures for the conduct of congresses, and the athletes and audit committees. There's clearly a lot of work to be done. And as also mentioned earlier, dealing with these matters by way of regulations rather than in the Constitution will enhance efficiency and responsiveness, and will also avoid the need to seek constant changes to the Constitution. Next slide, please. Finally, there are provisions in the Constitution governing the transition from the existing statutes to the new Constitution. With some exceptions, the new Constitution will enter into force immediately at the conclusion of this Congress, if it's adopted. The President of IBA, elected yesterday under the statutes, will be deemed to be the President of IBA under the new Constitution for all purposes until the conclusion of the first election Congress meeting conducted after the adoption of the Constitution. Now, that first election Congress meeting must be held, I'll stress this, no later than 11 December 2022, on a date to be determined by the board. It is very important to note that this first election Congress meeting can, and almost certainly will, be held significantly earlier than 11 December 2022. Until the first election Congress meeting is held, the existing members of the Executive Committee will be deemed to constitute the Board of IBA. Save for the 5 presidents of the confederations and the 2 athletes representatives, all positions on the board, including that of the president of IBA, will be filled by elections conducted at the first election Congress meeting. As soon as the board announces the convening of that first election Congress meeting, a transitional committee will be formed to supervise IBA in the run-up to the meeting. The transitional committee will consist of 7 members, with 1 chosen by each of the 5 confederations and 1 nominated by each of the Association of Summer Olympic Federations and the Global Association of International Sports Federations. In the absence of such a nomination or nominations, the remaining members of the transitional committee will themselves appoint a replacement member or members as the case may be. Next slide, please. If the draft constitution is adopted today, there will be a need to amend the constitutions of each of the confederations, and probably also the constitutions of at least some of the national federations. And IBA will certainly assist in that process. I should add that the current members of both the ethics and the disciplinary commissions will continue on as deemed members of the Ethics Committee and the Disciplinary Committee, respectively, until the next non-election Congress meeting. Further, the current members of the Athletes Commission will continue on as deemed members of the Athletes Committee until elections for that committee can be conducted. Now, the draft constitution is, of course, not perfect. Very few constitutions of large organisations are. It is instead the product of compromises. It will clearly not please everyone. However, it was drafted with an eye to the perceived wishes of the IOC, and also, as far as possible, to the wishes of national federations. In that regard, I'd note that IBA's delicate financial position and the constraints associated with the COVID-19 pandemic have limited consultations to an unfortunate degree, and lack of cooperative assistance from the IOC has not helped. However, and I'd like to stress this, a constitution should be a living document, not one set in stone. If the draft constitution is adopted today, it will, of course, be open to amendment at future congresses, and any amendment will, of course, be subject to the wishes of IBA's national federations. Now, on that note, I commend the draft constitution to the Congress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary, for this introduction. Perhaps here we can take, I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments or that they want to raise with respect to the draft constitution. We've already held 5 Q&A sessions where many comments and questions were answered. But if anyone else wants to add something at this stage, they're welcome to do so. I don't see any hands raising up. So if it's not the case, yes, I have one. Mr. Yu. Mr. Yu, you can speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, on behalf of Mr. Jae-jun Yu, I'm talking for him. So we have reviewed the amendment of the article, particularly article number 4. We are about to make some. So yes, so I am personally against the amendment of Article 4. A person with a personal experience decision making, etc., is very necessary to become a member of the board and commission. At this point, I highly evaluate experienced of there
Sorry, I don't.
operate IBA competition very smoothly. Therefore, I would like to propose that IBA should remain board of directors, maybe a member of committee and competition official, both like before. We should remain.
Perhaps I could answer that, Mr. Yu. What I understand you to be saying is that you oppose the provisions in the draft constitution which prevent board directors from participating in competition-related commissions or at competitions. Now, am I correct in that assumption? That's what you're saying? Perhaps if you unmute and if you can answer that, I could try and answer it for you. Well, in any event, if what you're suggesting is you'd like to amend that, I'm afraid it's too late to move an amendment now. All amendments had to be lodged, or proposed amendments had to be lodged with IBA head office by the 2nd of December. There is nothing to stop you from seeking to amend it at the next Congress of IBA. But not today.
Thank you, Gary. We got a question of the Q&R, and the president, according to the interim provisions which are in the Constitution, the president elected yesterday will be in place until the next election Congress meeting, which will take place at the latest at the end of 2022. Of course, he can run for a further term if he wishes to do so. It's not 2024, it's 2022.
That's right.
Mr. Baravilala wants to speak. If you could just move him to. Mr. Baravilala, you have the floor. Mr. Baravilala, Monsieur Baravilala, you have the floor. Yes, we hear you.
Thank you very much. This question probably directed to Gary. Hi, Gary, Mr. Gary Moore. This question is, hi, Gary. This question is in regards to the board composition. I noticed that the 4 directors from AFBC, AMBC, Oceania, and Europe, there's none from Oceania. Is there an explanation to that, Gary?
Well, the explanation is that, of course, Oceania has 2 representatives apart from its president on the board, and the fact that there is 1 extra from each of the other confederations is simply a recognition of the much larger size of those confederations. That's the explanation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Manessa.
Thank you very much. It looks like we don't have any additional questions. So then I will we'll move forward with the explaining how the voting process for the new constitution will go on. So as we have, the National Federation had the opportunity to file motions and proposed amendments, and 2 national federations have exercised these rights and have filed motions for amendment of the draft, and we have a total of 5 motions to be voted on. And in order to have the vote in the best democratic and clear way, we will do as we do in the Swiss Parliament. So first, the Congress, your Congress, will be asked to vote on the motion one by one. So meaning we will present the initial wording, the wording from the initial draft, which has been approved by the Executive Committee. We will present the motion, and then you will have the choice, you will have to vote between the initial wording and the motion. And the option which gets the highest number of votes shall be deemed to be included in the final draft. Here there will be a single majority, meaning the option with the highest number of votes will be included in the final draft. Then after we have voted on all 5 motions, then the Congress will be asked to confirm its approval for the full constitution, and then according to Article 30.2 of the IBA statutes, it will be a 2/3 majority of the vote cast without counting the abstention. Okay, so then if it's clear for everyone, I will just explain you just the next slides, as some of the motions are quite long. If you can just press the next slide. Thank you. As some motions will be quite long, they will be explained in detail by Gary Moore, and then on the Lumi platform, you will have a simplified wording explaining between the original wording and the amendment. And then you will have to click either for the option 1, original wording, and option 2 for the amendment. I'm wondering, perhaps for Lumi, we may leave a little more than 1 minute if some people have to read it and have it translated. Perhaps 1 minute for the vote will be a bit short. Perhaps Lumi, you could give a little bit more, like 90 seconds or whatsoever. So then we can move forward by presenting the motion for amendments that we have received. I believe Gary Moore will read them one by one, and then we can pass to the vote. If the petitioner wants to add something which what has been said, they can waive, and then we will move them into as a panelist. But otherwise, we'll move to the vote directly. So Gary, I will let you the floor for presenting the motions.
Thank you, Claude. Before I deal with the first motion, can I just say 2 things? Firstly, there are 3 national federations, in fact, moving motions. One is moved by, as you can see, by the Spanish Boxing Federation, and the other 4 by England Boxing and the US Boxing. The second thing I'd like to say, this really follows on from what Claude has said, is that you have to understand that what you are voting on is the motions that you'll see coming up, this being the first. You're not voting on the summary, which is on the Lumi site. That is a necessary contraction. But the motion that you are voting on is what I'll now take you to in relation to motion 1, and then later on to the other motions. So please bear that in mind. So the first motion is moved by the Spanish Boxing Federation, and it relates to current Article 14.2b in the draft constitution. And that currently reads as follows: each confederation shall have the following functions, rights, and duties: to organise confederation championships and other boxing competitions. The proposed amendment reads as follows: each confederation shall have the following functions, rights, and duties: to organise confederation championships, other boxing competitions, and training courses for coaches, referees and judges, technical officials, ring doctors, administrators, managers, and promoters with IBA programs. And I'll just point out that the operative new words that are sought to be inserted into the Constitution are in italics. So that's the proposed amendment to what's at the moment in the draft Constitution. Thank you. Claude?
Yes, thank you. Then if you can move to I will pass the floor to Lumi, because if you can move to the Lumi platform in order to vote between the original wording of Article 40.2b or the expanded wording proposed by the Spanish Boxing Federation of Article 14.2b. So we'll pass the floor to Lumi to conduct the voting.
Thank you very much for that, and obviously we'll be happy to do that. Oh, I thought you did. So We're just going to turn our video on so you can also see us present here in London as well. Just to reconfirm, we are not joined by a public notary today, but we are joined by your scrutineers online who are watching all of the voting proceedings and the voting proceedings taking place. Just to reconfirm that all voting members will need to move to the Lumi voting portal platform exactly like you did yesterday to cast your vote accordingly. I will announce when the vote is open, and I will also inform you when there are 20 seconds remaining, when there are 10 seconds remaining, and when the poll is closed. So I will be doing all of that. We will be giving a 1-minute poll for each item today. To reconfirm as well, these are a single choice question, so you simply select your desired choice by clicking on it. Once again, that will become highlighted and you will get to see a vote confirmation message appearing just above your voting options. So just once again, just to touch on the roll call, I can see that we just had a couple further members log in. So thank you for that. We have 116 currently logged in now to Lumi. That may well increase as the vote progresses, as people do log in. In fact, it's gone to 117 now. But of course, we are well within the quorum number. So I'm now going to move to our very first motion. This is motion 1, the amendment of motion 1. And can I ask all voting members to now move to Lumi? And I will now open the votes for this item. So the poll is now open. Once again, as a little reminder, all voting members, please now move to the Lumi voting portal platform to cast your votes for this item. The poll is open. The vast majority of votes have been received, but we will leave the poll open a little while longer as this is our first vote of the day. So please, once again, cast your votes now. So I will now say 20 seconds remaining for the poll. It's 20 seconds remaining. That is 10 seconds remaining. The poll is now closed. So all voting members, please now return back to Zoom, where we will present the results to you. I can confirm that we had a total possible votes of 119. There were 12 abstentions or blank votes, leaving us with 107 valid votes cast. Option 1, the original wording, 17 at 15.89%. Option 2, for the amendment, 90, which is 84.11%. We'll now hand back to you.
Thank you very much. So it means that the draft is deemed as amended on 14.2.b, including then the proposal by the Spanish Boxing Federation. Then I will pass the floor to Gary to present the second motion, which has been moved by the US and UK, or England, sorry, boxing federations.
Thank you, Claude. Before I read those, the the current provision and the proposed amendment, perhaps I should make the point that if the movers wish to say anything or anyone else wishes to say anything about these motions before there's a vote, they should be given the opportunity. Motion 2, as Claude has indicated, was moved by England Boxing and US Boxing, and it relates to current Article 27.1E in the draft Constitution. And that reads as follows: the Congress has the power, and when required by this Constitution, the duty to determine whether or not to approve the persons proposed by the board for appointment as members of the Ethics Committee and the Disciplinary Committee. The proposed amendment reads as follows: the Congress has the power, and when required by this Constitution, the duty to determine whether or not to approve the persons proposed by the board for appointment as members of the Ethics Committee and the Disciplinary Committee, also, if required, the power to dismiss members of the Ethics Committee and Disciplinary Committee. Now, the change here, in effect, is to remove the power to dismiss members of the Ethics Committee and the Disciplinary Committee from the board and vested in the Congress. And I should say, if this motion is adopted, it'll be necessary to adopt 2 further supplementary motions, which bring the balance of the draft Constitution in line with an amended Article 17.1E. We don't need to go to those yet, but I'll go back to you, Claude. I'm not sure whether anyone wishes to speak to the motion, speak to or against it.
Yes, I see that the English Boxing Federation wants the floor. Just for clarity on the motion 2, we will vote on all 3 articles which have to be amended. So we will first listen to the English Boxing Federation, and then Gary will also explain the sub-motion, because there will be only 1 vote on this change. Basically, the change meaning the power to dismiss members of the Ethics Committee or Disciplinary Committee, whether it should be vested in the board or in the Congress. But now I see that Mr. Jenkins from England has joined us, and he's got the floor.
Thank you very much, Claude. The IOC Lalevik report clearly questions the statutes of AIBA, and clearly, as we've heard earlier on, that they've been deemed not fit for purpose. For too long, those who have abused those have also been responsible for their following. The Ethics and Disciplinary Committee are the ultimate gatekeepers of AIBA's integrity and its operation and adherence to the statutes and the rules of the organisation. Thus, the power to appoint and dismiss should be with the people, i.e. the AIBA membership and the national federations, not those who have led us to the suspension by the IOC and not kept us in opportunity to deliver the Olympic programme. Therefore, we would urge the membership to support this motion.
Thank you very much for this. Perhaps, Gary, I will let you explain the sub-motions, which, because all will be voted at the same time, meaning this change, this question requires, in fact, the changes of 3 provisions of the draft Constitution.
Yes, can we have the next slide, please, which is termed Supplementary Motion A. There is a current provision, Article 29(1)(n) in the draft Constitution, which vests the power to dismiss members of the 2 committees in the board, and if in fact that power is switched to the Congress, then this provision will have to be deleted. So the current provision reads as follows: 29.1, save as otherwise provided by this Constitution, the executive power to govern AIBA is vested in the board. Without limiting the generality of the foregoing, the board has both the power and, where so required by this Constitution, the duty to dismiss members of the Ethics Committee and Disciplinary Committee by a resolution adopted by not less than 2/3 of the vote. Now, Clause N in this article is currently inconsistent or would be inconsistent with an amended Article 17.1e, and if that amendment is carried, it should be deleted. And subsequent clauses in Article 29.1 should be marked with new letters accordingly. Thank you. The next supplementary motion is supplementary motion B. The current provision in Article 36.14 of the draft constitution reads as follows: a member of the Ethics Committee or of the Disciplinary Committee may only be removed as a member of that committee by a motion of no confidence adopted by not less than 2/3 of the directors serving on the board at the time of the adoption of such motion. Again, as presently worded, Article 36.14 would be inconsistent with an amended Article 17.1e. And should that latter article be amended, it'll be necessary to amend 36.14 to bring the two articles into line. The proposed amendment to Article 36.14 would read as follows: a member of the Ethics Committee or of the Disciplinary Committee may only be removed as a member of that committee by a motion of no confidence adopted by the voting delegates from the national federations in attendance at a meeting of the Congress. Thank you, Paul.
So thank you very much. So then we will move on with the vote on this motion. So as already mentioned, it will be on the Lumi platform. You will have a simplified questions where basically you can choose between the original proposal, which was the board has the power to dismiss with a 2/3 majority, or the amendments, which means that the Congress has the power to dismiss the members of the disciplinary and the Ethics Committee. I will then pass the floor to Lumi for conducting the voting.
Thank you very much. Just to provide a brief update as to the number of NFs that are now present in the Lumi platform, that is 122 currently now present. So we are now going to move to this amendment motion 2. So please, all voting delegates, please now move to the Lumi voting portal platform. And I can now state that the poll is open. Once again, as a reminder, please, all voting delegates now cast your vote in the Lumi voting portal platform. Okay, there are now 20 seconds remaining. That's 20 seconds remaining. That is 10 seconds remaining for the poll. The poll is now closed. So all voting delegates, please now move back to the Lumi voting, back to the Zoom platform to now see the results that will be presented to you. We're just going to present those results. Sorry, we are now sharing our screen with you. So you can now see that we had a total possible votes of 123. 15 of those were abstentions or blank votes. Therefore, we had 108 valid votes cast. option 1, the original wording, 20, that is 18.52%. Option 2, the amendment, that is 88 votes, which is 81.48%. I'll hand back to you.
Thank you very much. Then we'll move on the next item. I will let Gary read it out, and then I see that Ted Tanner wants to say something. So I will, after Gary, then Ted will be given the floor.
Thank you, Claude. This again is a motion moved by England Boxing and US Boxing, and it relates to Article 30.4 in the draft Constitution. That article at the moment reads as follows: any term or terms of office previously served by the President or any other director as a member of the former Executive Committee of IBA shall not be taken into consideration in calculating the maximum number of terms of office which such person may serve on the board. The proposed amendment would change that as follows. 30.4 would read, any term or terms of office previously served by the President or any other director as a member of the former Executive Committee of IBA shall be taken into consideration in calculating the maximum number of terms of office which such person may serve on the board. Claude.
Thank you very much, Gary. On that, I think we have two persons who waved hand. First, Ted Tanner, and then we'll pass the first to England Boxing. First, Ted Tanner, who wanted to say something.
Can you hear me, Claude? Hello?
Yes, we hear you very well.
Good, thank you. No, Claude, I wish to speak on the last motion, so that's passed. But I will want to speak on this motion too, but it would be appropriate that I do so after the mover.
Okay, so then we can pass the floor to Mr. Jenkins. Can you put Jenkins in there? So it always take a little time to. England is here. Si. Yes, il a levé la main.
Thank you, Claude. We'll be quick on this one as well. The Lalovic report clearly highlights the inability of the leadership of AIBA to reinvent itself. This clause, as proposed by the leadership, continues this ongoing same leadership. We need change. Therefore, the historical tenure, the time served by the existing EC needs to be counted when looking to bring change to this organization. It is time for change and not up to another 8 years of the same people who have led to the suspension by the IOC. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think Ted Tanner wanted to say something, and after that we'll take also a comment from Mr. Muhammad, but I don't have his full name, sorry for that. So Ted Tanner. Is Ted on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Muhammad, you can speak.
Yes, I want to clarify one thing. That amendment says that all the terms should be taken into the accounts, or as a member of some executive committee, or as the member of the same office. If he is the president, he has 2 terms. Only those terms should be counted, or all the whatever capacity he has served as EC member, those terms will be counted. I want an explanation on that. Thank you.
So the explanation is that in the proposed draft constitution, meaning it's like we will reset the clock when the constitution enters into force. So it means there is a maximum number of terms under Article 30.3, which is so a director can serve a maximum of 2 consecutive terms of office, and the president a maximum of 2 terms of office as president. So meaning it can stay 2 terms of office as members and then 2 terms of office as presidents. And the question is that the initial proposal was that terms already served under the current constitution do not count. And the proposal by UK, England, and US is that the previous term counts. So it means the clock will not be resetted, and everyone who has already served 1 term will only have 1 term left to be served.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ed, if you want to say something on that.
Yes, Claude, look, I oppose what is being moved by England Boxing and Boxing USA. There's a great principle that is being broken here in relation to legal issues and general matters. They're introducing retrospectivity into this issue. The Constitution and the board are looking to the future. This matter has been closely considered by the Reform Commission and by the Executive Committee, and some members, perhaps they haven't correctly interpreted it, but some members believe that this is an effort to punish them because they were successful at the last Congress. Because they were successful and were elected, they now feel, some of them feel, that this is an effort to punish them for having won. This actually, too, this motion takes away the ability of the confederations to elect their members now to the new board of IBA, because 15 of the 22, as was said by Dr. Moore in his introduction, it is proposed there be a board of 22 people in the future, 2 of whom will be athletes, and 5 of whom, the president, and 1 from the Confederations of Africa, Americas, Europe, and Asia, to be elected by the Congress as a whole. But the other 15 people are to be elected by the national federations in each confederation, and they're to choose their own people. And this motion, in effect, takes away and directs them that their rights to choose among themselves are reduced. Look, there is an ambiguity too in this motion if it's passed, because if you look at the motions that are placed on the screen here now, you'll see that there's ambiguity with regard to the president's position. And furthermore, what I respectfully put to Mr. Jenkins, what he's saying in his introduction of this motion was an attack too upon Mr. Kremlev. I urge people in the issues of fairness, don't introduce retrospectivity into saying what you could do yesterday, you can't, now you're going to now be prevented from doing. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ted. I think the matter is, I see that Mr. McCarthy from the US and Mr. Pina want also to express themselves. So we'll take those 2 questions, and then after that, we'll go to the votes. So Mr. McCarthy and Pina, or Pina, can be moved to the... Mr. Pina, you have the floor.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui, très bien, merci.
OK. Moi, je pense que l'idée des États-Unis de la Grande-Bretagne a sa raison d'être, puisque dans le rapport du comité olympique, quelque part, j'ai dit qu'on nous accuse l'AIBA n'a pas cette capacité de changer de leadership. Donc, ça a de sens. Merci.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. for that. And then we have Mr. McCarthy, who also can have the floor.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for being on this very important meeting. In drafting this motion, England and USA Boxing really looked at the Lalovic report and the cultural change that's needed to save AIBA. I respectfully disagree with Mr. Tanner in that it's very clear that term limits help with cultural change with leadership. It does not impact anybody that would be voted on or brought in as in the future. All this says is that if someone has been a leader in AIBA, those years will count. That will help in bringing in new ideas. And I believe that, you know, the vote yesterday was a vote for new ideas. So I would encourage everyone to vote for the amendment to have term limits. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much for this intervention. Just to answer a question on that matter, the current statute means the limit is 3 terms of office, but terms of office served by an EC or by a vice president are not taken into account in determining the maximum term of office for the presidency. So it means you could have 3 terms of office as an EC member and 3 terms of office as a president. And now under the new constitution is 2 terms of office. And perhaps just to clarify with respect to the president, the terms of office served as members of the board do not count as terms of office as president. I see that we have Mr. Amuzu who wants to say something. Perhaps we'll just take his questions and then we move to the votes. Amuzu. Mr. Amuzu, you have the floor. Mr. Amuzu, you have the floor. You have to unmute and you can speak. Mr. Amuzu? So perhaps it was just a false manipulation of the device. So we have no further question on the matter. So I will then move on to Lumi in order to conduct the voting on this motion, meaning between choosing whether previous terms of office shall not be taken into consideration. And it's still possible to do 2 full terms of office, or if it is taken into consideration, meaning that the one who have already served 2 terms of office in the EC will not be eligible to serve for further terms of office at the board of directors under the new constitution. So Lumi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Sorry for the slight delay there. Just to confirm that we do have 127 NFs now currently present on the platform. So please, all voting delegates, please now move to the Lumi voting portal platform. The poll is now open on the platform, so please do cast your votes now. Once again, a little reminder, all eligible voting delegates, please now cast your votes within the Lumi voting portal platform. There are 20 seconds remaining for the poll. That is 10 seconds remaining. The poll is now closed. You can now move back to Zoom, where we will now present the result to you. I can state that there were 127 possible votes, 15 abstentions or blank votes, therefore 112 valid votes cast. Option 1, the original wording, 40 votes at 35.71%. Option 2, the amendment, 72 votes at 64.29%. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So then we'll move on the fourth motion, which has also been moved by England and US Boxing, and I'll pass the floor to Gary to present the motion.
Thank you, Claude. The fourth and fifth motions both deal with appointments to the Ethics Committee and the Disciplinary Committee. Motion 4, as you've said, moved by England Boxing and US Boxing, deals with Article 36.8 in the draft Constitution, and that says at the moment, not less than 20 days prior to the date fixed for the commencement of each ordinary Congress meeting, which is not an election Congress meeting, the IBA head office shall forward by post or email to all eligible national federations and publish on the IBA website a full list of those persons whom the board proposes to appoint to each of the Ethics Committee and the Disciplinary Committee, subject to each such proposed appointment being ratified by the Congress concerned. Now, the proposed amendment extends the background to appointments to those two committees in this way. The proposed amended article will read, not less than 20 days prior to the date fixed for the commencement of each ordinary Congress meeting, which is not an election Congress meeting, the IBA head office shall forward by post or email to all eligible national federations and publish on the IBA website a full list of those persons whom the board proposes to appoint, following the recruitment and appointment recommendation of those persons by a suitable independent body or bodies of high international standing, to which of the Ethics Committee, B, the Disciplinary Committee, subject to such appointment being ratified by the Congress. Thank you, Claude.
Yes, thank you very much. I see that Mr. Jenkins wants to say something. Can we move? We will just move Mr. Jenkins on the side where he is promoted as a Yes, I think now, Mr. Jenkins, you can speak. Mr. Jenkins, you're on mute. If you want to speak, you have to unmute.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. The purpose of this motion is to ensure we not only get the highest standard of ethics committee membership, but it's appointed independently. Best practice, and if you look at other governing bodies, is to use independent people to nominate representatives to serve on the panel and not leave it to the executive or what would become the board of directors to choose. Obviously, there would be a vested interest in how that operates. So as much independence in the appointment of the ethics and disciplinary committees as possible. And that is the purpose of this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I see that Mr. Nguyen also raised hand. Mr. or Mrs. Nguyen, vous. Vodang Tuy Nguyen, you have the floor. If you want to speak, you have to unmute your device. So we have no, so I think perhaps it was a mistake. We can then move on to the vote between those two motions, meaning whether it's motion 4. Yes, it's motion 4, whether there need to be a kind of assessment by an independent body of high international standing for the ethics committee and disciplinary committee before being appointed by the board and confirmed by the Congress. So you will be asked to vote on that, and I will let Lumi perform the voting process. Thank you.
Sorry, Claude, was that to hand over to Lumi for the vote? Can you just confirm that?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, sorry.
Please conduct the vote. Sorry for that.
My apologies, my apologies. So please, all voting members, once again, please now move to the Lumi voting portal platform for the vote of amendment motion 4. The poll is now open. Please cast your votes now within the Lumi voting portal platform. Once again, as a reminder, the poll is now open. Please cast your votes now within the Lumi voting portal platform. There are a further 20 seconds remaining for the poll. That is 10 seconds remaining. The poll is now closed. So voting members, please now return to Zoom, where we will now present the results to you. I can now state that there were a total possible votes of 128. We had 16 abstentions or blank votes. Therefore, valid votes cast were 112. Option 1, the original wording, 26. That is 23.21%. Option 2, the amendment, 86. That is 76.79%. Back to you.
Thank you very much for that. Now we'll move on to the 5th and last motion for amendment, which is related to the previous one. And I will let Gary present this motion.
Thank you, Claude. As Claude has indicated, this is a follow-on from the, in a sense, from the last motion and deals with a situation which might arise in terms of the approval process of the members of the Ethics Committee and or the Disciplinary Committee. It relates to Article 36.11. The current article reads as follows. In the event that the voting delegates from the national federations in attendance at an ordinary Congress meeting, which is not an election Congress meeting, vote not to approve the appointment of any persons who the board has proposed to appoint to either the Ethics Committee or the Disciplinary Committee, then the board shall forthwith appoint 3 other persons whom it deems appropriately qualified to fill the vacant offices on such committee until the next ordinary Congress meeting, which is not an election Congress meeting. Now, the amendment which is proposed by England Boxing and US Boxing reads as follows. In the event that the voting delegates from the national federations in attendance at an ordinary Congress meeting, which is not an election Congress meeting, vote not to approve the appointment of any persons who the board has proposed to appoint to either the Ethics Committee or the Disciplinary Committee, then the board shall forthwith appoint 3 other persons following the process outlined in Article 36.8, that's the last article we referred to, until the next IBA Congress meeting or through ratification through Confederation Congress meetings. So it really is a reflection of the motion you've just passed in this particular circumstance. Thank you, Claude.
So thank you very much. On this last motion, I see that Mr. Roberts wants to say something. Neil Roberts, raise hand. So we'll move him on the. Yes, Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts, you are on mute. If you unmute yourself, you can speak. Mr. Roberts? It looks like it was not. I motion to speak. I don't see anyone else raising hand. So I believe that in that sense, we can directly pass on the vote. So the difference is that if in the draft constitution, if the Congress does not ratify the members of Ethics and Discipline Committee, then the board has to appoint 3 other persons until the next ordinary Congress, which is not an election Congress meeting when under the proposal. If this happens, the board also has the power to appoint 3 other persons, but it has to follow the process we just approved, 36.8, and it is until the next IBA Congress meeting, not until the next ordinary Congress meeting without election, or through ratification through Confederation Congress meeting. So now I will pass the floor to Lumi to conduct the vote on this last motion for amendment.
Thank you very much. So once again, as a reminder, please, all eligible voting delegates, please now move to the Lumi voting portal platform. So this is amendment motion 5, and I can now state that the poll is open. So please now move to the Lumi voting portal platform to cast your votes. As a reminder, please now cast your vote in the Lumi voting portal platform. The poll is open. Please cast your votes. That is 20 seconds remaining for the poll. 20 seconds remaining. Ten seconds remaining for the poll. I can now say that the poll is closed. So all voting members, please now move back to Zoom, where we will now present the result to you for this amendment motion 5. We have a total possible votes of 130. We have 21 abstentions or blank votes. That is 109 valid votes cast. Option 1, the original wording, 25 votes, that is 22.94%. Option 2, the amendment, that is 84 votes at 77.06%. I'll now hand back.
So
Thank you, Paul. That's all five. That's all 5 motions, all amendments passed.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gary. So it means that all motions have been now passed. So we will have to move to the final vote on the Constitution, to ask the Congress delegates to approve the Constitution as a whole. And just to answer 2 questions I received on the Q&R, the Constitution will enter into force immediately after the close of this Congress. The only thing is that the members of the EC will stay in place until at the latest in 2022, and the president elected yesterday will also stay in place until the latest in 2022. So now you will be asked to vote on the full Constitution. So it means this is the Constitution which has been, the draft which has been published on IBA website and circulated with the National Federation as amended today with the 5 amendments which are deemed to be included in this draft. And this is what you are asked to vote on. And the majority is a 2/3 majority, as it is a constitutional change. And I will now pass to Lumi for the voting process on the full Constitution.
Thank you very much. So once again, please, all voting delegates, please now move to the Lumi voting portal platform to be ready for this vote. To confirm, there are 3 options, that is yes, no, or abstain for this particular vote. And I'm now going to open the poll for this motion. The poll is open, so please cast your votes now. As a reminder, the poll is now open. Please cast your votes within the Lumi voting portal platform. I can now state that there are 20 seconds remaining for the poll. That is 10 seconds remaining. The vote is now closed. Please now return to the Zoom meeting where we will now present the results to you. So we had a total possible votes of 130. There were 26 abstentions or blank votes. 104 valid votes were cast. Yes, 98, that is 94.23%, and no, 6, that is 5.77%. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much. So this now closes the vote on the new constitution, which has been largely adopted. I want to thank everyone for their participation. Thank also the national federations who moved motions, because I think it was a very, it's very good to have the feedback from the federations and to be able to insert them into the constitution. So then I will pass the floor back to Mohamed to continue with the next item of the Congress, which will be the presentation of the AIBA accounts. Thank you.
Can I just say thank you, everyone, as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all our lawyers and experts who spent time for the institution. Thank you to all federations for the input, to all for this new constitution. Step forward for the process. AIBA have amend the next. Move to the next item, which is the finance approval of the audit. Give the floor to our finance director, finance.
Hello. So hi everybody. My name is Rob Garea. I will do the finance report presentation today. Just please note that all the numbers that are presented in this presentation are in Swiss francs, as it is the AIBA functional currency. And the closing rates at the end of June 2020 was, for 1 franc, was USD dollars 0.96, which is very close to the parity. Next slide. I would like to underline that the annual reports, the same day they were sent to all the national federations, were also posted in the AIBA website with all the other reports from the prior years. So now I'm just going to cover the balance sheet report, which is the total of assets and liabilities, and with a section at the end called unrestricted funds. Well, we call it more commonly equity, or this is where you will see the debt situation. So the last time in the Congress in Moscow, we were about 20 million over indebted. And as per 30th of June 2020, we now down to 9.9 million, which is almost 10 million of over indebtedness. Next slide. So here you have the graphic representation of the indebtedness of AIBA over the last few years. The AIBA has reached an indebtedness situation since 2013. So you can see that from in 2014 there was 4.4 million under. We went down to 12, back up to 10, to then go down to 2018 for 19 million. And we are recouping, we are recovering, going back up to, as per the end of June 2020, a 9.9 million over indebtedness situation. So the negative equity, if we look more closely from 2019 to 2020, you have a simplified representation showing the assets and liabilities, which are in balance, showing the equity, the negative equities that I was previously commenting. You can see that from 2019 to 2020, we have reduced the debt, the total debt by 7.7 million. And my comments on these 7.7 million they were mainly driven by the World Championships that happened in Russia. There was a 5 million that was realized at end of Nuremberg and Ekaterinburg. And there is another portion, which is the revenues from Rio, which, although the cash was cashed a long time ago, there's a portion that every year is realized. And this was the last portion of the Olympic revenues that we gain on Rio 16. Next slide. So what is behind this negative equity of 9.9 million? So there is well, there's three main things. There is the Bencons loan from Azerbaijan. When you're looking in the balance sheet, it's split between short term and long term, but the total is 7.7 million. There is a debt that was accumulated for World Series of Boxing, WSB. Is that there's no, the competition and the entity, as they are dormant, there is no there's no the same concern than the debt of Bencons or the debt of various debtors and provisions, or 0.9. I will comment later in my presentation. So why IBA is not bankrupt with such a over-indebted situation over the last years, you might ask? Well, there's a technicality where IBA, being an association, is not obliged to be registered in a commercial register. So it means that as long as IBA is capable to pay its current debt, it will not be bankrupt. And capable to pay its current debt means that the cash flow situation has to remain above zero. This is the critical focus we had in the last years, and we have been in the survival mode in that aspect. So as long as the cash flow is above zero, we will not be bankrupt. So how did we avoid the bankruptcy? So there's few points I'd like to comment. First of all, mention about the World Championships in Russia. So there was a 5 million cashed in 2018 and 19 that maintained IBA with a cash flow, a positive cash flow situation. There was additional sponsors and marketing deals from the marketing commission led by Mr. Kremlev. We had a million cashed, over a million cashed in 2019 and 20. And then there's been a contract for the Global Boxing Cup where 1 million was cashed in 2020, in September 2020. So that's the most important component that maintained IBA alive. In addition, we went through important cost cuttings. There are significant cost reductions across all expenses. So in the past, where we were at 6 million and even above, we have managed to reduce all the expenses at its minimum, which represent 1.6 million for the last exercise. And the last point is we managed to collect some of the debts, and there's the India debt was paid over the last year. There was a 0.4 million that has been collected and allow IBA to maintain this survival mode I was referring and the cash flow. Next slide. So I am going to comment a bit on this is the income statement with all the operating income and expenses. I will cover those operating expenses that I just mentioned more in detail in the next slides. Next slide. So Here you can see the operating expenses of the last years, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20. I think it shows how much effort has been done, especially on the last 12 months, to reduce the expenditure at its minimum. So the next one is more in detail on the last 8 quarters. Again, it shows clearly how much we compress and how much the expenditure has been reduced to its minimum again. This is an example of this year where the cash balance reached a critical point, and as I mentioned earlier, there's a contract for the Global Boxing Cup, where the contracts has agreed on 1 million in September, and we are waiting now another portion, the final payment for this contract. But collecting in advance the cash for this Global Boxing Cup allowed HIBA to remain alive until today. So here I would like just to precise or come and clarify what is the scope of the audit. The audit look the past. We talk about the profit and loss, which is all the revenues, and the past is on a specific date from to. The last 2 exercises are from the 1st of July 2019 to June 2020. And the prior exercises was July 2018 to June 2019. So this is where the past is measured and controlled. So that's fine. It has been controlled and verified. The present, which is the balance sheet with all the assets and liabilities, which is a picture at a specific date. So we have a balance sheet at June 2020 and a balance sheet at June 2019. So that has been verified, and the report is clear about it. Where we have an issue is the going concern and is the future. So the future or this going concern is the assumption that an entity will remain in business for the foreseeable future. So I will comment a bit more in the next slides, but basically, our auditors see a significant risk in the capacity of HIBA to operate on the next 12 months. So I will comment more in detail in the next slides. So here's the opinion. So there's mention about the proper execution of 2 agreements. And the below paragraph, you have the clarity on what is the proper execution of the 2 agreements. So there's the payment schedule for first championship has been respected. So this is related to the World Boxing Championship, which is scheduled in 2021. Initially, we had the payment scheduled for November, and then the payer has requested to delay the payment to next year, which is perfectly acceptable as the event is in 2021. Then the second championship are expected in December 2020. So this is in reference to the Global Boxing Cup. We had 1 million paid in September, and now we're expecting the second and the last payment, which is scheduled for the end of this month. So this is what Moore Stephens meant by proper execution, means the completion through the payment, nothing else. So I just wanted to clarify based on some of the comments and questions we received. Just I think it's pretty clear what the opinion says, but I just wanted to clarify. So if we move to the next slide. So this is the a simplified cash flow to illustrate the auditor opinion, the comments we just went through. So the cash flow situation of AIBA is at risk with the payment of Bencons of 1 million due in January and anti-doping and other repayments. Should we not have any cash in December or in January, well, AIBA would reach an insolvency, which would lead to the dissolution of the association. This is a risk factor that is commented in by our auditors in their opinion. If we look the next slide, this is with the 4 million, the Global Boxing Cup 4 million that is scheduled this month. Even if the payment is next month, we will be able to face the debts and the immediate payments that are due in January. So now if we look in the Global Boxing Cup, or if we're looking the past events and other deals that have been supported, they have respected the contracts, the payments, the payment dates. It has been consistent. So we don't see why we will not be able to collect these 4 million. But as I mentioned before, is a risk remains. So that's what led our auditors to the non-opinion. If we go to the next slide, I'm again reinforcing the fact that the past, the present have been validated. Where there is a risk, it's an ongoing concern. Should we not collect any cash in the next 30 days? And my last slide, which is the conclusion, in the preference order, we have three paths. One is collecting at least 1 million, either Global Boxing Cup or other ways. The second path would be to have an agreement with Bencons to delay or to find an agreement until the sufficient cash is available. And the last option would be to dissolve AIBA. Obviously, they are in the order of preference, and this is my my conclusion. Before I pass the floor to Deborah Depra, which is from Moore Stephens, I welcome any question or comments you might have. Is there any question or comments? So I pass the floor to Deborah Depra from Moore Stephens.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. As Rob said, I'm Deborah Depra from Moore Stephens Refidar, and I'm acting as engagement partner for AIBA. Today, the idea is to present shortly who is Moore Stephens, and then I will also present the work performed in terms of audit for AIBA, and then I will conclude on the work performed. So yeah, next please. So Moore Stephens Refidar, next slide, please. Yeah. So Moore Stephens is a member firm of an international network called Moore. Moore is represented in more than 100 countries in the world. And in Switzerland, we are located in Geneva, Nyon, and Lausanne. We are about 50 people working there. in terms of audit, we, in accordance with the instruction given by the executive committee, we perform a limited review on the financial statement of AIBA based on Swiss auditing standard. A limited review provides less insurance than a full scope audit, but International Boxing Association is not required by Swiss law to perform a full audit, taking into consideration the size of the association. Next, yes, please. Perfect. In this section, you can see briefly the audit procedure performed during our limited review. Normally, as you can see, a review is limited to discussion with staff and management. And also, we also perform normally analytical procedure. However, considering the fact that AIBA was not in very good situation, we perform some additional testing to be sure that revenue was correctly booked. We perform additional testing on debtors, on liability completeness, also, etc. But as we were engaged to perform a limited review, our conclusion was based on this standard. For the financial statement ended June 2019 and June 2020, we were not able to express a review conclusion. This fact is not due to the quality of the accounting data, but it's directly linked to the going concern assumption. Indeed, we had significant doubt on the ability of AIBA to continue as a going concern and and its ability to repay its debt when they fall due. That's why it was with those elements we were not able to assess this going concern assumption, and in conclusion, we were not able to express an examination, a review conclusion on the financial statement. So I know that it's a little bit complex for for person we are not in the audit. So I will be happy to answer to any question. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Is there any comments or questions that either Deborah or myself can answer?
I see we have one question from Mr. Mohamed Said. Mr. Said, you have the floor. Mr. Said, you have to unmute your device in order to be allowed to speak and to ask your question.
Est-ce qu'on peut savoir en quoi est due cette dette? Qu'est-ce qui a provoqué cette dette?
So, on peut peut-être retourner. We can return to one of my slides. If you go back down, back. Again. Stop. Next slide, please. No. There you go. Je vous réponds en français?
S'il vous plaît. La traduction, elle est faite de toute façon.
Alors, ouais, je vous réponds en français. Alors, les 9,9 millions de dettes, c'est le total, le montant total de dettes. So, la majorité de ce montant est lié au prêt Benkons de l'Azerbaïdjan qui a été fait entre 2010 et 2013. Ce montant-là était de 10 millions à la base et a été réduit à 8 millions ces dernières années. Il reste 8 millions, 7,7 avec la conversion, mais il reste 8 millions ouverts. Et on a un contrat de repaiement qui stipule un repaiement de 1 million par année. Le prochain paiement est dû en janvier pour 1 million. Donc, les 8 prochaines années, selon le contrat qui avait été passé, il y a un paiement d'1 million par année. En plus de ces 8 millions, il y a, pour la World Series of Boxing, il y a 1,2 million qui sont dus. Il n'y a pas la même urgence que Benkons en janvier. Et on a aussi une succession de provisions et de dettes qui ont été accumulées ces dernières années. Ces dettes représentent 0,9 millions. On a retardé et repoussé les paiements avec certains, nous avons des accords qui nous permettent de payer ça sur une année ou deux. Mais ces montants-là, on va devoir les payer aussi assez rapidement. Ce sera sûrement prochainement entre ces 3 ou 6 prochains mois. Donc ça, c'est ce qui représente principalement la dette de 9,9 millions. J'espère que ça répond à votre question.
Oui, un petit peu, mais pas totalement clair parce que l'argent emprunté à la banque Bencom, est-ce qu'elle a servi l'AIBA ou il semblerait que l'AIBA s'était porté caution de ce prêt pour la WBS. Donc là, l'AIBA paye parce qu'il était cautionnaire, mais pas parce qu'il a dépensé.
C'est exactement ça. Quand j'ai dit 2010 et 2013, c'est que le prêt initial était en 2010 et AIBA était cautionnaire. C'était un investissement en 2010 qui se convertissait en prêt en 2013 avec l'AIBA comme guarantor. C'est ce qui s'est passé en 2013. L'argent n'a pas été remboursé et du coup, AIBA a dû reconnaître la totalité du prêt dans ses comptes. C'est ce qui a plongé la AIBA dans cette situation de surendettement.
Je comprends.
Vos éléments sont tout à fait corrects.
OK.
Est-ce que ça répond à votre question?
Oui.
So thank you very much. I know that Mr. Kremlev had something to say, so Mr. Kremlev, you're on.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги, друзья, семья, братья, сестры. Я очень рад вас приветствовать. Ну, хотел бы сказать, что касаемо финансового отчета. Да, это, конечно, очень печально, но это факт, то, что сегодня присутствует. Но я заверяю все национальные федерации, в ближайшее время я сделаю все возможное, чтобы АИБА не была обременена долгами. Это вы все увидите. Мы это будем, все действия будут публичны. В короткий срок и решены эти проблемы. Спасибо за правду, за финансовую отчетность, то, что есть сегодня. Но наша главная задача, мы, боксерская семья, должны объединиться, быть вместе. Это моя задача. Что касается этих задолженностей и вывести АИБу на другой уровень, это будет моя задача вместе с вами. Моя задача – это привлечь финансов и сделать очень эффективную работу маркетинга, и не только АИБа, и помощи Национальной Федерации. В ближайшее время мы перейдем от слов к делу, и вы увидите. За это можете не переживать. Вы мне доверили. Спасибо за ваше доверие. Я ваше доверие оправдаю. Я вам гарантирую. И что касается взносов, взносы все будут вовремя оплачены. Здесь нет, что касается оплаты чемпионатов, мы сейчас отрегулируем, все оплаты придут вовремя в АИБа, не будет никаких затяжных моментов. Вот. Я уже с понедельника начну работать, и с понедельника прошу все национальные федерации, я отправлю завтра свою электронную почту и номер телефона. Если есть вопросы, пожалуйста, я вас очень прошу, пишите, звоните, я для вас всех доступен буду 24 часа, буду лично отвечать. Можете на любом языке, английский, французский, вот на американский, на все языках звонить, мы должны ценить. У меня есть помощники, они знают языки, мы будем с вами общаться на одном языке и решать эти проблемы, и на любой ваш вопрос буду отвечать лично сам.
Thank you, Mar. I don't know why I'm chairing, but it looks like I'm chairing. So I believe, I don't know if anyone else has any further questions. Otherwise, I believe that it's time to vote on both years' financial statements. So the vote will be to vote on the 2-year financial statement 2018-19 and 2019-2020, and then you will be asked to vote in favor or against those financial statements based on what you have heard today. And I will then pass the floor to Lumi in order to conduct this vote.
Thank you very much. So once again, all eligible voting members, please now move to the Lumi voting portal platform to be ready for the poll to be open. This is a vote on the audited financial reports as was just described. So I can now say that the poll is open. So please do cast your vote now. This is a yes, no, or abstain vote. The poll is open. Just as a reminder, the poll is now open, so all voting delegates, please now cast your votes. So I'll now state that there are 20 seconds remaining. That is 10 seconds remaining for the vote. The poll is now closed. Please now return to Zoom and we will present the results to you shortly. I can now state that there were a total possible votes of 131. We had 38 abstentions or blank votes. Therefore, we had 93 valid votes cast. Yes, 86, that is 92.47%, and no 7, which is 7.53%. I'll now hand back to you.
Thank you very much. I believe this closed this financial presentation, and I think the floor is now back on Mohamed and the Vice President. It's probably Mohamed chairing and the Vice President for the Q&A session on the reports which have been made available online before the Congress.
Thank you very much. We'll have to question and answer sessions on reports that made available on the website. So we will start by a summary, the IBA Interim President report, and then after we will have an IBA Confederations report. Sorry, just for the yes, for the IBA Interim President report, yes. Should we should I wait for so oh, yeah, summary of the last 18 months. So
Dr. Mustasan?
Yes.
We cannot hear you very well. Your connection is very poor, your internet connection. The sound is very, very bad.
Now?
If you can speak, if you can continue, we can check.
Okay, so the key IBA key achievements.
Yeah, now.
Announced governance with more frequent executive committee meetings, fully engage all of the members on decision-making, empowerment of IBA national federations, as we involve all national federations on preparing the new constitution. Also, we had the IBA's financial stability and quality decision-making. Total transparency for a democratic election process with historic 7 candidates eligible, more efficient IBA commission centered around diversity, gender equity, and high-level expertise. IBA key achievements, clean sport at the core of IBA strategy in full compliance with World Anti-Doping Code, new competition with innovative format as the Global Boxing Cup, first ever online development courses for IBA officials, and IBA medical handbook update. New protest rule was implemented for ensuring a fair play and growing to trust from boxers. Also, the IBA finance, a better budget planning and decisions with reduction of the costs. And as you have seen with the finance reports, 4.9 million of saving. So overview of 2018 and 2020 events. So the key events in summary was the 10 EC meetings with an outstanding men and women world championship in Russia, successful 2020 IBA forums held in Panama, in Fiji, in Jordan. Unfortunately, the forums in Europe and Africa was postponed due to the pandemic. We had the IBA Reform Commission meetings meetings of shares of IBA Continental Medical Commissions. So with the 2019 Men World Championship in Ekaterinburg, 365 boxers from 78 countries with 8 weight categories and 40 medals awarded in total, distributed among the 15 countries. So the 2019 Men World Championship in Ekaterinburg, more than 20,000 media news and articles, and we had more than 10 million views on YouTube. 2019 Women World Championship in Ulan-Ude with 224 boxers from 57 countries. Also, we had important follow by media and with media. Also, we have the forums. We had successful forums in Oceania, in America, and in Asia. In terms of governance and the empowerment of the national federations, NFs, involvement in the creation of the new IBA constitution, significant and valuable number of proposals received from national federations and reviewed by the IBA legal draft group. Also, we had question and answer sessions per continent to clarify all the continental amendments. IBA commissions, we had the IBA commission, the IBA Athletes Commission was successfully conducted on electing athletes representatives. We have also the IBA Reform Commission held by several meetings since established and successfully produced the recommended revised draft of new IBA constitution. We had also the IBA Commission as an IBA Marketing Commission. Executive Committee appointed this commission for IBA competition with a global marketing plan across the 5 continents to attract sponsors and secure broadcast deals for those competitions. Also, we have appointed Mr. Rey Silvas as a chairman of the RNGs Commission, Mr. Mauro da Silva as a Technical Rule Commission chairman. In addition, we have appointed Mr. Erwin Kade as a leading task force of coaches online courses, and Mr. Rey Silvas as online RNGs Commission courses. For the medical and athlete safety, IBA Medical Handbook Review was reviewed. We had a lot of amendments and were approved and posted in IBA website. So you can see here the Medical Commission amendments that in details in the IBA website. For the IBA anti-doping, IBA Robust Anti-Doping Program, IBA plan to extend its contract for 2021 with the International Testing Agency to ensure that WADA compliance is maintained. IBA was one of the first international federations to implement a new improved IBA anti-doping regulations. So was valid as of 1st January 2021 in accordance with the revised World Anti-Doping Code. IBA adopted the best practices in the fight against doping by joining the CAS anti-doping division as a first instance redicing body for the decision related to anti-doping. We had also the online courses due to COVID. We had a lot of RNG seminars conducted by our instructors. So in the Americas with 780 attendees, in Africa 44 attendees, in Asia 344 attendees on Zoom, and over 2,050 via Facebook streaming. Also, we had the coaches courses, which one-star IBA coach courses hosted online by Ecuador Boxing Federation, and another one with also with participation of Ecuador, Bolivia, and Peru, and one-star IBA coaches courses hosted online by Kenya Boxing Federation on on 2nd to the 6th December 2020 with 30 participants. For the future competitions, I think Global Boxing Cup will be one of the main competitions that we will launch very quickly, very soon. This will be explained and presented in the next future with the preparation for the participation of over 48 teams over the 5 continents with 5 weight categories. Also, we will have the 2021 Men World Championship will be organized in Serbia, and the Youth World Championship organized in Poland. Updates on WSB World Series of Boxing. No World Series of Boxing competition were organized on 2019 and 2020. In summer 2019, World Series of Boxing financial situation was truly bad, with an imminent risk of bankruptcy. After 1 year of procedure and thanks to measures and of restrictions, World Series of Boxing SA is now out of bankruptcy. The World Series of Boxing program can be launched once the world pandemic situation improves. Thank you very much. If you have any questions. No? So then I will move to the Confederation's reports. I will start by the African Boxing Confederation. The presentation I will present the IFBC Executive Committee. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic and to other certain African specific circumstances, we couldn't have a quorum when we called for General Assembly in August 2019. Thus, we kept the same executive committee for IFBC, and as you can see, we have tried to manage the national federations in such a difficult situation in Africa with, as you know, we have 15 national federations. For the financial reports, as you can see, we had $3,200 incomes when the salaries and administration costs are more than $8,400,000. For IFBC competitions, we conducted the zonal competitions in Morocco, Botswana, Cameroon, and Cape Verde. And at the end, we had the All Africa Games in 2019. We plan to have IFBC Youth Championship and IFBC Elite Championship and more 4 zones championship. For 2021, we plan to have those competitions and prepare for the IBA Youth and Elite World Championship and the Global Boxing Cup. For the IFBC courses, 2020 was the year of the development programs, and we have successfully conducted coaches and RNGs courses 1 and 2 star in Uganda, Sudan, Cape Verde, Cameroon, Morocco, Botswana, and Kenya. We have also conducted the first pilot online RNGs courses in Africa, which was dedicated to Lusophone countries. So Mozambique, Cape Verde, Angola, and Guinea participated to this course. And also we conducted the first pilot online coaches course in Africa in Kenya. Thank you very much. Yes. If there is any question, if not, I will give the floor to Mr. Bisbal for the presentation of the Americas reports. Thank you. Mr. Bisbal, you have the floor.
¿Se me escucha ahora?
Yes. Yes.
Bueno, como ustedes ya han leído el informe, estamos en un congreso diferente a los congresos del pasado, no solo por su formato, sino también por las cosas que se tratan en este congreso, que de él depende el futuro de AIBA. Creemos que estamos en buen camino y que podremos volver a los Juegos Olímpicos en breve tiempo. Debemos admitir que hemos cometido muchos errores en el pasado y solo debemos ver estos errores como una dura lección y mirarse al futuro. Nuestras federaciones nacionales y especialmente nuestros boxeadores merecen ese futuro con la conducción de AIBA y dentro del olimpismo. Como pasó en Moscú 2018, pido que las federaciones nacionales dejemos las diferencias y trabajemos todas unidas para el mejor progreso y para el mejor funcionamiento de AIBA y del boxeo olímpico. Como ustedes saben, la Confederación Americana está presidida por mi persona. Cuenta como vicepresidentes al señor Raymond Silve de USA, Nib Stimbal de Guyana, Mauro Boselli de Brasil, miembros Leila Jackson de Caimán, doctora Luisa Benítez de Venezuela, doctor Tomás Cianca de Panamá, Rafael Vega de Costa Rica, Ale González de Ecuador, doctor Carlos Velázquez de Guatemala y José Laureano Sepúlveda de Puerto Rico. Nuestro reporte financiero, lamentablemente carente de ingresos. Hemos terminado todos los últimos periodos con el arrastre que ya teníamos con deuda. Tenemos en este momento, de todas maneras, una cuenta abierta en Costa Rica donde contamos con $11.000, $11.600 más 1.700 que tenemos cash, hacen un total de $13.414 con 68 centavos como dinero que tiene la Confederación en este momento. No obstante, debemos recordar que la deuda total de la Confederación, contando los sueldos que no se pagan ya hace un tiempo largo del director ejecutivo y los demás miembros, que son en total 3 empleados, de $123.000, $123.100. En materia de competiciones, Tuvimos el campeonato juvenil AMBC en Puerto Rico, en Puerto España, perdón, en abril del 5 al 11. Los Juegos Bolivarianos en Sucre, Bolivia. Clasificatoria juvenil panamericana, es un lugar a definir. Juvenil panamericano, Colombia. Para el 2021 tenemos previsto el Mundial Juvenil AIBA en Polonia y la clasificatoria americana del 6 al 13 de mayo en Buenos Aires. En materia de cursos, hemos desarrollado el primer curso de ITOs en el Caribe. Dicho curso fue hecho en Santa Lucía y nos ayudó mucho a mejorar el número de nuestros oficiales. Durante este año y con la cooperación de la Federación de Ecuador, AMBC dio seminarios para referee juez, entrenadores y oficiales. AIBA decidió tener el primer curso online para entrenadores una estrella con el apoyo dado por la Federación Ecuatoriana. Aunque hemos tenido periodos difíciles, AMBC ha estado sosteniendo seminarios online para entrenadores, referee juez y oficiales. Cada mes, con el apoyo de Ecuador, tuvimos la chance de tener el primer curso online aprobado por AIBA. Sinceramente, deseo expresar mi aprecio a todas las federaciones nacionales por su gran paciencia para sobreponerse a todas las dificultades. Y de este congreso espero que AIBA y AMBC tengan solo días felices bajo la unidad y la armonía. Y por supuesto, un deseo al nuevo presidente de un éxito total, pensando nada más que en los boxeadores y en el destino de nuestra institución. Gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Bisbal. Now we give the floor to Mr. Franco Faccinelli, or for Mr. Anas Al-Ujaiba for the ICC report.
Yes, PC report. Shukran, Mohammed. Thank you very much. I think the report is going to be on the website. I just highlight some of the major achievements we had since I was elected in 2018. Yeah. So we have in ASP 43 national federations. In April, we organized the first Congress of ASPC, and we elected our EC members. The national federations in Asia are 43 national federations.
Mr. Anas, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but the sound is very poor. We cannot hear you very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yeah, a little bit better, but maybe when you speak, we just have a little issues.
Okay.
You can come closer to the microphone.
I will say it again. So the 43 national federations in Asia are distributed into 5 main regions. East Asia, Central Asia.
Sorry again, I think it's the problem with the internet connection, because it cuts some of your words. We cannot hear it clearly.
Okay. Well, I cannot do nothing about that.
You connected to Wi-Fi internet?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
it's already connected and it's trouble.
Okay.
So I will continue. I hope that you will hear me now very well. And after the General Assembly, there was election for the EC members. We have 4 vice presidents, Mr. Yusuf Al-Qazim, Mr. Shawati, Daejeon Yu from Korea, Wudi from China. We have also the members, Philip Shawati from Indonesia, Suzufan, Edgar, Jay, Mr. Ulo, Fauzi, Sayyid, Ali Taklif, and Bilan Saki. This is the EC members.
Mr.
And you can find all the details in the.
Mr. Anas, I'm really sorry, but the interpreters are not able to translate because the sound is really poor. So should we give you some time maybe to check your microphone, and try to reconnect, and we can give the floor in the meantime to the other confederation, because it's not possible for interpreters to translate. They cannot hear you very well, and I think the reason is either your microphone or internet connection. Maybe you can try to reconnect and you test your microphone. When you connect, you have a possibility to test your microphone.
Okay, we will connect.
I think it's Mr. Anas, if you can. You are too from your mic.
Okay, we'll connect again.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe if you agree, we give you time and we pass to another report of confederation, and then you will respond first after the others, if that is okay with you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much. So what will be the next?
Thank you. I think now we go to EUBC report. Mr. Franco Falcinelli, you have the floor.
President, you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Thank you. And first of all, I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our congressman. I want to thank Mr. Mohamed Mustafa for his available commitment during your interim president. And then I would like to express my warmest congratulations on behalf of the European Boxing Confederation to President Umar Kremlev on being elected to lead AIBA in the next years. I am also particularly happy because after 42 years, a European president regains the leadership of AIBA, succeeding the Russian Nikiforov Denisov, who left in 1978. Yesterday, the electoral competition ended with a clear winner. We must take off the gloves and support the work program that will be drawn up by the new president to achieve those results that we all share, because the goals of the presidential candidature were essential. Sport teach us for reconciliation. After a hard fight with hard blows changes, there is an art. And the child rose compliments between the boxers. We must have the strength and the humility to adopt this teaching and apply them to our mission as volunteers, sport managers. From today, we must work together with President Umar Kremliev to make AIBA great again, as he said. So now, as the President of the European Confederation, I am pleased to report the last 2 years and the forecast for the next years. The UBC is made up of 48 national federations. It is led by me, 3 vice presidents like Umar Kremliev, Volodymyr Prodivius, Eyüp Göcek. 12 EC members, Suleiman Mikhailov, Bono Bosniak, Maxim Setikotev, Jakub Rakimov, Emilia Grueva, Nenad Borochin, Felipe Jose Martinez, Jürgen Kias, Susan Karlander, Dominique Nato, Vasile Chitea, David Siklauri, and one special advisor, Mr. Sumaid Khalidov. Of course, we have Mr. Sasha Egorov, one legal counsel, Mr. Alessandro Oliveiro, and one treasurer is the Dr. Alberto Tappa. In 2018, we have organized 7 EC meetings. UBC has 8 commissions that work effectively in their respective areas: coach, competition, communication, marketing, medical, passion for boxing, refereeing judge, women, and the youth commission. In 2018 and 2019, we organized 13 European championships, and only the terrible pandemic forced to reduce only 2 in 2020, the year of COVID. In UBC calendar 21-24, we have scheduled 4 UBC championships. And in 6 European championships in 2022, 5 European championships in 2023, including European Games in Krakow, and 5 European championships in 2024, of course, Olympic Games in 2024. Regarding the Paris Olympic Games 2024, I would like to ask to the new president, Mr. Umar Kremliev, to launch an appeal to IOC President Thomas Bach to avoid another punishment to Olympic boxing. In Paris 2024 program, IOC are taking away 34 places from boxing to make way for recreational activities such as climbing, skating, surfing, and breakdance to enter in Olympic Games. We respect all forms of sporting activities and their ambition to be part of Olympic Games. But this cannot happen by damaging boxing, which is a sport born with the Olympic Games, and thanks to its inimitable champions, such Laszlo Papp, Boris Lagutin, Teófilo Stevenson, Cassius Clay, Sugar Ray Leonard, Vasil Lomachenko, Anthony Joshua, and many, many others made a huge contribution to the popularity of the Olympic Games. Moreover, we cannot accept the compensation that want to include one more female category, because this is another mistake. The principle of equality gender cannot be realized against the male boxers. Therefore, I ask President Kremlin to seriously consider this important technical problem. I want to go ahead with my report, development and projects. We will, since we have adopted just 3 hours ago the amendment who allow the Confederation to organize courses for manager, coach, administrator, promoters. In accordance with AIBA, we would like to help the National Boxing Federation to update their main person, the main protagonist of boxing for a new vision and a new culture. And we would like to launch online courses starting from March 2021. Medical protocol. Thanks to Dr. Ioannis Filipados and Dimitri Gaistruk, UBC has developed an excellent protocol for event management during COVID-19 pandemic. We can share it with all other continental confederation. UBC digital media. UBC activity is growing up in number of followers on social media, and on our YouTube UBC channel, we have had more than 3.5 million viewers. UBC financial, in consideration of the difficult economic situation deriving from the failure to pay the ordinary contribution by AIBA and from the failure to collect the fees for the organization of championships and tournament in 2020, the year of COVID, we have provided for a systematic reduction in management costs through a review of the service and supply contracts, as reported in the year 1st July 2020, 30 June 2021 financial report. Despite this reduction in expenses, all the service and efficiency of the officers were guaranteed. But above all, I am proud to say it, all we kept the equity fund, which as of 30 June 2020 is 231,000 euros. Thank you for your attention.
Very much. Thank you, Franco, for your presentation. I would like to give to Ted Turner.
Thank you, Mohammed. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, whether it's good morning to you, good afternoon, or good evening, from the Oceania Boxing Confederation, we send our good wishes to you. Can I firstly, Mohammed, thank you for the work that you have done as interim president. I know you've worked very hard, and I think as people learn more about your work for us and your interactions with the International Olympic Committee and with our debtors, well, and the other work you've done to ensure that we've been able to hold the successful tournaments. People will greatly appreciate what a hard time you've had, but how you battled through with it successfully. Can I also congratulate Mr. Umar Kremlev on his election as president of IBA and wish him from all in Oceania the best of good wishes in his work. With regard to the report from Oceania, the most important boxing event for Oceania National Federations in 2019 was the Boxing Championships of the Pacific Games, which was conducted very successfully in the beautiful and hospitable nation of Samoa. And during that championships, we also held our General Assembly. The attention of Oceania National Federations then turned to preparation of their boxers for the 2020 Asia Oceania Olympic qualification event, at which a number of Oceania boxers qualified for the Tokyo Olympic Games. However, it needs to be emphasised that Oceania National Federations participate in combined confederation tournaments under protest. Oceania believes that IBA and the International Olympic Committee diminish and disrespect the Oceania boxing community and, in particular, its boxers by the practice of combining it with Asia in such tournaments. We appeal to the IBA boxing community to recognise the Oceania National Federations as a separate confederation and not just an adjunct to our good friends in Asia. Following the holding of the Asia Oceania Olympic qualification event, the COVID-19 pandemic struck. A ban on international travel had the result that the bad effects of the COVID-19 pandemic were mostly kept out of Oceania, with the exception of one city. However, the suppression of the COVID-19 pandemic in Oceania did bring our international boxing activity to a standstill and, depending on the nation, greatly reduce or stop domestic boxing competition and training. Sport of boxing activity is now resuming in Oceania nations, but there are still restrictions on international travel, adversely affecting resumption of international competition. Fortunately, prior to the onset of the pandemic, IBA, through its marketing commission under the chairmanship of Umar Kremlev, facilitated the holding in February in wonderful Fiji of a successful forum of Oceania National Federations. Financially, Oceania is in better shape than IBA. We don't have any debts, and as of today, we have $10,150 in the bank. However, unfortunately, in addition to the stopping of boxing competition, the pandemic has prevented the conducting of the proposed Oceania program of R&J and coach education seminars. When government health authorities advise international travel is allowed, the program will commence and instructors will travel to locations in geographic groupings of neighbouring Oceania National Federations to conduct the seminars. The intention of the seminars is to prepare their participants to successfully undertake IBA, R&J and coach certification courses. It's planned that following the conducting of the education seminars, that R&J and coach IBA certification courses will be conducted. In the meantime, until international travel can be resumed in Oceania, webinar R&J and coach education seminars will be conducted. On the positive side, we are pleased to advise that life is returning to normal in Oceania and that the sport of boxing is resuming. The Oceania National Federations look forward to meeting the worldwide IBA community of national federations in 2021. We thank our governments and God for maintaining our safety during the pandemic and acknowledge that in this instance, the isolation of Oceania nations from the rest of the world has been a blessing and a benefit. Our best wishes to all and our prayers for the safety of all World Boxing community participants and their families. Thank you. And Anastasia, are you going to take over?
Thank you, Mr. Ted, for your presentation.
Thank you, Mohammed.
It was really, really and still really nice to work with you. Thank you for your hard work. I have to give the floor to Mr. Anas. I hope everything is okay. Mr. Anas, you have the floor.
Shukran, Mohammed. I hope you can hear me now. Good. Okay, thank you very much. I will not take much of your time. Our report is already put on the website. So we have 43 national federations. After we were elected in ASBC, we started from, as you know, we started from zero. We tried to build the resources for ASBC with the help of our strategic partners. We held our first Congress in 2019. It was very successful and we had very high of participation rate, almost 88%. The Congress elected the new EC members of the ASBC, and the members now are the EC member, the vice presidents are Mr. Shawad from Thailand, Mr. Yusuf from Qatar, Woody from China, and Ji Jong-yu from South Korea. The EC members are Ms. Shili from Indonesia, Mr. Sayed from Singapore, Mr. Sisufan from Laos, and Mr. Ali Taklif from Iraq, Mr. Edgar from Philippines, and Jay from India, Mr. Dayan from Sri Lanka, and Mr. Zusulfirik from Kyrgyzstan, Mr. Sakin from Uzbekistan, and Mr. Fawzi Asafra from Palestine. We had a very successful year. After that, we started to select people for the commissions. We had the competition commission, the R&J commission, the coaches commission, the medical commission, the women commission, the youth commission, and the marketing commission. Events in Asia are the Asian Elite in Thailand, the School Boys in Kuwait, the Junior competition in UAE, and the youth competition in Mongolia. The best of Asia are the best of elite men is Israel from Uzbekistan. Elite woman is Li Quan from China. Youth men at Chai from Thailand. The youth woman is Sakashi from India. The junior boy is Kisham from India. The junior girl is Arodati from India. WSB boxer Muhammad Istan Khan from India. ASBC Discovery, which is a new potential, is Gaurav from India. The best coach is Mr. Rafael from Italy, and he's working in the Indian team. And the best supervisor is Mr. Azlan from Kazakhstan. The best ITO is Mr. Dilshad from Uzbekistan. And the best national federation in terms of achievements is Uzbekistan Boxing Federation. We held many many educational programs through the web, and they are back to the ring. Women empowerment and building skills, choosing the rightful winner, ASBC coaches webinar, fair play boxing free of doping, which is organized by ITA. In terms of financials, in 2019, we were able to generate income of $332,700. In 2020, we were able to generate $216,200. Now we are about to launch, as I indicated in my speech yesterday, we are about to launch a new fund for the Asian Boxing Federation. The fund will support all the federations that need support in terms of material or in terms of tickets or participation fees or any of the things that they need to have support with. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for their contribution and support. And we will continue our work as professional and as independent as possible. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anas. Now we have
President, I'm sorry, President.
Yes.
Bisbal.
Yes.
President, yo quisiera corregir un error que cometí en mi presentación, un grosero error, porque en vez de nombrar al señor Mauro da Silva de Brasil como presidente de la Confederación Brasileña, nombré al señor Mauro Boselli. Un grosero error de mi parte y yo quiero corregirlo y que quede sentado que el integrante de la Confederación Americana es Mauro da Silva. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much all around the world. Rules Commission, and also who have successfully conducted courses in Africa. Thank you, Mr. Mauro. Thank you, Mr. Bisbal. Now we have through the presentations. We go to the next item, which is the IBA measure text and competition 2021 and 2022. Next. 2020 on the project. are to have an AIBA men and women championship in Poland, boxing in Russia, and also for our boxers for the qualifiers and the big game you want. With the and Fizu University World Cup Combat Sports.
I'm sorry for interrupting, Dr. Mustasan, but your connection is very poor. We barely hear what you say. Hello?
Our connection. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Camera, maybe it will work better.
Sorry?
You don't have camera now.
Oh, I think you are the one to stop my. No?
I'm not able to activate your camera, and the sound is very bad. Hello?
You have the.
Cannot hear you.
Do you hear me now?
Yes?
Okay.
No.
No? It's bad. The connection is bad. Maybe you should try to call in to dial the number from the phone.
Oh.
I will send you a link separately. One more and the number.
Is that okay? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? شوف بس هاي شو نخدمها. Can you hear me now? Anastasia, can you hear me?
Yes, it seems to be better.
Okay. Thank you. So next slide, please. For 2021, we're planning AIBA to have AIBA Youth Men and Women World Championship on April 21 in Kielce in Poland. Also AIBA Men World Championship, maybe from planned for scheduled for September to October 21. It will be in Belgrade in Serbia. Next, please. We have also a new competition with the AIBA Global Boxing Cup to be held in March 21 in Russia in 50 cities with 5 weight categories with 48 teams with 1,750,000 prize money. This new competition will be presented very soon to national federations. Next, Antim, next slide, please. This is the IOC Olympic qualifiers in Europe, America, and the final one in June. Also, you have the Olympic Games, Tokyo 2021 in July, August 2021. Next, please. We'll have the Commonwealth Games in 2022 in England, Birmingham, the FISU University World Combat Sports in Ekaterinburg in Russia in September, October 2022. Next, please. So I think we come to the end of this AIBA, first ever AIBA Virtual Congress. I take the opportunity to thank all the EC members, all the AIBA staff who worked so hard in the last year for the tremendous work that they provided in such a difficult period for AIBA. I would like to thank all the AIBA family for the support, for the help, for the assistance, for the trust that they have put on the AIBA EC and all the AIBA family. Thank you so much. Before closing, I would like to give the floor to our new AIBA president, Mr. Umar Kremlev, for the last word of this AIBA Congress. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a safe journey, and would call all AIBA family for unity and work, united work. This is the only way that AIBA may succeed and be kept inside the Olympic family. The work still didn't finish, it's just start. Mr. Umar Kremlev, you have the floor.
Да, спасибо, Мухаммед. Я очень рад еще раз приветствовать мою большую семью. Вот. Я вообще очень счастлив, что я в ней нахожусь, и мне доверено решить проблемы семьи, объединить всю семью. Я хотел бы поблагодарить Тед Теннера за его работу, за большую работу реформы устава. Я хотел поблагодарить Франко Фанчинелли за большую его работу тоже в реформах. И мы надеюсь и уверен, что мы дальше будем сотрудничать независимо. И также вижу, чтобы мы все были в одной команде. У нас одна задача – это в короткий срок решить все проблемы. Также Аннаса хотел тоже поблагодарить за его работу, за работу Азиатской конфедерации. Мы одна команда. Мы показали демократические выборы. Мы доказали, что у каждого из нас интерес, чтобы поднять бокс. Также хочу поблагодарить за его работу Асфальда Бизваль, также офис АИБа, членов исполкома. Я хочу поблагодарить, сказать им спасибо большое за доверие, за работу. Нам еще предстоит очень большая работа. Действительно, сегодня мы стоим у, как говорится, непростой ситуации, у нас сложная ситуация, но я до этого говорил, сейчас говорю, я несу за это ответственность. Я не пришел для того, чтобы не сделать ничего. Я пришел для того, чтобы мы все были вместе, были одной командой. И то доверие, которое вы мне дали, я все это всерьез отношусь. Я понимаю, как вы мне доверили и надеетесь. Вот. И эта надежда не будет обнадежена. Мы сделаем заново АИБу великой. И даже не сомневайтесь, с понедельника мы начинаем плотно работать. Я хочу сказать, что я хочу создать тренерский совет при АИБе, чтобы был. Собрать всех великих наших тренеров. Собрать совет чемпионов, которые будут при АИБе также. Они будут нам помогать проводить быстрейшие реформы. Реформы имеется в виду в административном работе. Также хочу работать с национальными федерациями напрямую. Также с континентами. Чтобы мы работали 24 часа. У нас нет времени. По крайней мере, у меня точно нет времени отдыхать. Вот. И приступаю к своей работе с понедельника. Прошу, если есть вопросы, присылайте. Я оставлю с понедельника, отправлю письмо. Там будут все контакты. На самом деле, я очень благодарен, что мы показали настоящая семья. Было не очень просто. У АИБы очень были сложны, но никто ее не бросил. Все участвовали, все тратили свое время, возможности, кто чем мог. И сегодня мы до сегодня дошли до Конгресса и провели Конгресс. И сейчас исторический момент, где мы должны вдвойне прибавить силы и мощно форсировать возвращение ее. У нас есть на это всего лишь полгода. За полгода мы действительно должны сделать огромную, колоссальную работу. Я ваш член семьи. Вы моя семья. Еще раз спасибо огромное за доверие. Я с вами. И хотел еще добавить, приношу извинения, хотел добавить те кандидаты, которые тоже баллотировались, хотел бы, чтобы тоже участвовали, те предложения, которые они видели в реформах. Также хочу, чтобы и Бориса, и Сулеймана призвать к работе КАИБа. У нас нет разделения, мы все болеем за одно, за развитие, чтобы бокс только возрождал. В общем, друзья, независимо, кто за кого голосовал, мы одна семья. Пожалуйста, давайте вместе работать. Только вместе. Один я тоже ничего не смогу сделать. Если вы все будете поддерживать, будете рядом, и я готов работать 24 часа вместе с вами. Так что спасибо еще раз за доверие. С понедельника начинаем работать.